I had to go in with a baseball bat one time and get a girl that was fucking chained to a bed. I had to bring 5 guys about your size with me, and I didn't
In
give a
Delray?
fuck. Oh yeah, I stormed through that door, got the 3 girls that I knew were in there, and fucking called the cops and watched them burn. And walked right up to one of these motherfuckers and said, "Let me tell you something. You're bringing out the prison in me, and I don't give a fuck. You have these girls chained to these beds. Are you fucking kidding?"
Welcome to the show, Dana.
Thank you so much for having me.
Second time's a charm. So
This is my first podcast too. You're the
okay.
first. I've been asked to do 3 now, but you were the first one. So
First one. Well, yeah. Well, me and you met because you have your Instagram page, Plant Curing, and you're good friends with Tara, who has actually been on my show twice.
yeah,
Tara was one of my first early on guests because I've been on her show too because she has her show on 420 Recovery, and so I've been on her show, so she did my show, and then she did one of my stigma episodes back in October where we talked stigmas. So, and then you and I met, I think she was with you, and then I hopped in your live and we talked a little bit briefly, and I was like, oh, I got to talk to her more. So now, let's start from, what is your sober date?
so I go by the last time that I pretty much was in the thralls of addiction, living that lifestyle. I did have one lapse in between after getting sober, but really for me, I want to say that once I got on my path, I mean, we're talking about 2011, 2012 area is where I put everything down. And then went on the road of just, being sober and not doing anything. And then I had a slip, and then I went to plant medication.
Okay. And we'll get into all that. Now, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from New York.
The state or state or city? Because
I'm from Westchester, which is right outside the city.
Yep.
My dad's side of the family still lives there. My parents divorced when I was younger, and my mom moved to Florida where her parents were. And this is where I've been. I spent my early days going back and forth where I would spend my summers in New York, and then the rest of the time I was with my mom. Had the best of both worlds when it came to that.
Yeah,
really
because summers in New York, you're not dealing with the winters in New York.
You're damn right.
Yeah.
But I love snow.
Okay.
So
well, I mean,
absolutely love snow.
Wait, drugs? You like cocaine or?
I mean, at one time both, but now it's just the snowballs that I could throw at people. Actual snow.
Yeah, actual snow, not 8 balls. Snowballs.
Yeah. My 8-ball days are over. I'm too old for that shit.
No one was throwing 8 balls anyway, and if you were, you were really responsible. Well, no, actually, in The Departed, he throws an 8 ball at one point. He throws it at her. In The Departed, Jack Nicholson.
Okay.
With that one,
you're gonna do movie quotes on me. Don't do it because my husband does it, and I look at him and I'm like, we've been together for 8 fucking years. Like, why do you think that I'm gonna know? Like, why? I don't understand that. You're my best friend in the world, and you know me better than anybody. Why do you think I'm going to know these quotes? We watched a movie 2 weeks ago, and then he'll ask me 2 weeks about it. I'd be like, we didn't watch that. I'd be like, are you kidding? I'll be like, no, I'm not kidding. We didn't watch that. So I'm really bad when it comes to movies. So when you say a movie quote and I look like a deer in headlights,
no, that's fine.
Is why.
The only time I've ever forgot a movie, ironically enough, was Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
I know that movie.
Well, this was 2008 when they came out, and I was
probably
just getting into like Percocets, and I had the apartment that everybody hung out at, right? Everybody always came over and would hang out at my apartment. I was the only one at 21 that had her in place. Yeah. And so we were watching TV with like you had to back then. There wasn't streaming shit back then. You had to watch commercials
or DVDs.
I worked at Best Buy. I had like 400 DVDs. It was the most ridiculous like thing. And then I sold them all for drug money eventually.
Of course.
GameStop would buy them all like by the bundle. Yeah. Anywho, so it's the few of us that we're all just like smokers, at that time, and I'm just dabbling in the perks. And we're sitting around watching a commercial, and the trailer was on for Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I'm like, oh shit, I would see that. That's hilarious. And the two people I'm with both look at me like, we just saw that. You drove us to see that.
Yes.
You were our ride. How do you it was 3 days ago. You drove us there. How do you not remember? I'm like, get the fuck out. I know we didn't. They're like, it was the day that we smeared the blunt in liquid Percocet. I'm like, well then how the fuck do you expect me
How do you expect me to remember?
You smeared the blunt in liquid perk, and I'm like, yeah, I remember everything. No, get the fuck out of here. So ironically enough, the only movie I forgot was Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Which is fitting for the name.
Exactly. It makes me laugh so much every time I think about that. And if they are watching, one of the two people, they are laughing right now thinking of how they yelled at me, because they always yell. Everybody always yelled at me because I would just say some shit to piss everybody. I'm that kind of guy that would instigate something just for fun. Like last night we were watching Tommy Boy with like Chris Farley, an old classic.
Oh, yeah.
And I took a picture of Rob Lowe, who's obviously Rob Lowe. And I sent it into the family group, and my dad is even more of like a TV and movie person than I am. So is my brother. And I said, Mikey, my wife, Mikey thinks that this is the guy from Parks and Recreation. And they're like, what are you talking about? They're like, yes, it is. I'm like, no, it's not. And like, I'm just trying to get them riled up. And then I finally called. I was like, I'm just fucking with you. I was just,
yeah.
It's like 10 o'clock at night. I was just, finally my sister's like, you guys, is JD just messing around? I'm pretty sure he's just kidding with you guys. And I was like, Jessica, that's why you have the only college degree in this group chat.
So basically, you're just the ball buster of the family.
I am. When I'm bored, I'm like.
And your dad is above you on it.
Yeah, well, we're the exact same person, except we're 23 years apart in age. You know what I mean? Like, we are the exact same person when it comes down to how we talk, think, act, how we want to spend our leisure time. The only difference is he's a workaholic, and I'm a workaholic who is a recovering drug addict.
Understood.
So that's the only difference. He got in family really early, and that, he never got into drugs because he got into working to support a family in the 80s, and
Gotcha.
that was into. And then, how old are you?
I am 36.
Okay, so you're my age, so you get it. So when we were like coming of age, we weren't trying to settle down right away, because
we were
trying
not
to go against what our parents did in the 80s.
Yes.
Wanted to wait it out. We wanted, especially you came from a parents of divorce. You really wanted to wait. You didn't want to rush anything. I'm just assuming, based on what I've heard from other people from parents of divorce. My parents are still together, but I didn't want to jump into something at 23 and have kids right away like they did. So that was the difference. That's why, my dad fell in love with my mom at 22. I fell in love with Oxy at 22.
I mean, I also watched a bunch of people start having kids like super young, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. My best friend, for one, she has 5 kids now. Like, there was a important time. Yeah. There was the very time where things like shifted, where she became like a mom, and it's always been like that now, but she 100% has been mom. And I watched her and like what she went through, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just not ready for that. I'm going to be Aunt Dana, and I'm still Aunt Dana, and I'm totally good with that.
I'm stepdad JD. Yet. I'm JD. I'm stepdad. You know what I mean? I jumped in at 5. I skipped the diapers. I skipped the teething. I skipped all that stuff. 5 years old, I'm teaching him manners. Please and thank you. Right to the 5-year-old. Now he's 7. He'll be 8 this year. All right, back on track. I go on rants. I can't help it.
It's all right.
So you're growing up in Westchester. Your parents divorced early. You're traveling back and forth to Florida. When is it do you discover any kind of escape with drugs or alcohol?
I want to say that my first time, and I don't want to say it was an escape really. The escape came for me later. Really just trying drugs at that point was, cannabis for the first time, which was just pot or weed, whatever dirt weed you could possibly find.
Some mids,
whatever.
Some KB.
Yeah, whatever they had. I mean, it literally just said pot on the bag, pretty much. It wasn't anything.
It was just a Ziploc bag. It was a Ziploc
bag.
Someone wrote a weird name on it and said, "This is Skittle Fritz. Take it."
Yeah, basically. I mean, at that point, it wasn't even names. It was like regular mids or Crip. That's what you were getting back in the day. That's what I feel.
Yeah, for us, it was regs. It was mids, headies, and KB. KB was like middle, you know what I mean? Like mids were like regs, and and then headies was like, the good shit.
Where do you live again?
I'm from South Jersey, right outside of Philly.
Okay.
But now I'm up in like Bloomsburg. I'm actually closer to Westchester now because I'm up in Bloomsburg, which is like kind of near the Poconos, kind of near Scranton.
Oh, I know where you are.
So yeah, we have like our big fair and a college here. We're known for the college and fair here. So
nice.
It's definitely a cool little town because it's still a small town, but it's still big enough, and it's in the middle of nowhere. But the mountains are beautiful. So I don't feel like I'm in a rural area because I can walk to work.
I feel you.
I can walk down Main Street.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like I'm in the middle of like Jabumba mountains where I can't walk anywhere. Like in Massachusetts where I used to live, you couldn't walk anywhere. Just to get off the street was a 2-mile walk.
Yeah.
I hear you were a side street.
We just don't walk in Florida because it's too fucking hot, to be quite honest.
I can't
do that.
I don't even want to walk in Disney World in Florida because it's too fucking hot. Like
yeah.
All right, so you're going to Westchester, you're back and forth. How old are you when you discovered pot then?
13.
13. And when is it that alcohol is introduced? You're never really a drinker?
So it was really never a drinker, but of course I did that through high school. The one thing I really didn't do in high school was I didn't do anything except for smoke weed and drink. Everybody else was doing a whole bunch of other stuff. I just really didn't get into it because I got into selling weed. I was like, oh, there's a market for this. Everybody wants to smoke and I can make some money, and my mom was real big on me having a job anyway. And let me say this first, there was no reason for me to have to sell weed. I come from a family that took care of me. We weren't millionaires, but we were definitely totally fine. But for some reason, I decided that this was going to be a really good thing for me to do. I had a job at an ice cream store and I was selling weed out the back of it and never thought twice of it. Plus, the little owner there I was selling weed to him too. So that really carried on all through high school. I think I tried Xanax maybe in my senior year, but once I got to college, that's when everything came off.
And this is down in Florida.
This is in Florida. So
yeah. Mid 2000s. You graduated 2004, I would imagine.
2003.
Okay. So, and the pill mills were, huge, obviously, in Florida back in that time frame. Like in that time period, that's when the pill mills started really like popping up and like doctor shopping started like popping up around there, right?
Oh yeah, that's exactly when it started. So that's kind of where I moved into, that I shifted into too. So once I graduated high school, I was off. Like I went to New York for a little bit and then I literally came back. I was going to school in Miami with my best friend. And that's when I discovered ecstasy. Ecstasy was huge. The partying scene there was absolutely huge. It was so intoxicating, pretty much, coming from, I would come from a really nice area, which is in Wellington, Florida. Everybody kind of knows everybody. It's huge now, but back when I was growing up, everybody kind of knew everybody.
Did you go to the University of Miami? Did you go to the University of Miami or just a college in Miami?
No. I just went to college in Miami.
Okay.
And instead of living on the dorms, my friend and I actually got an apartment, which our parents got for us. So we had our own apartment. So it was,
and ecstasy was so huge in Southern Florida. It was being trafficked into the country in the early 2000s.
We were making it here. We were making it. The people that I got hooked up with eventually were making it. They were getting the stuff here to press it and make it and flood the streets with it. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yep. But that's what I mean. It was coming, like the rest of the country was coming from there. Like that's where it was starting and it was coming up. That's, I hate to make another movie reference on it. That's why Bad Boys 2 did a whole entire theme of ecstasy. Like the entire Bad Boys 2 movie is in Miami and it's all about ecstasy. So, that wasn't by accident, and that's not a coincidence that you're talking about 2004 in Miami, and that movie was 2002 Miami, and it was flooded everywhere. Not a coincidence.
Yeah.
So, so now you're telling me, now you're doing E, that is a party drug. I've only done it like 3 times because I was more of a downer guy. I was trying to find my new thing right before I turned 20. I had just turned 22, or right about to be. And I was so over alcohol. I had been drinking for 11 years at that point. So I started, and I was just so done. At 21, I went so hard. I was so bored with it. So, when I was trying to find something new before I got into pills, I got into hallucinogenics for like 3 weeks. Like, I'm talking like acid all the time, shrooms, and E.
Yeah.
And, that was like, and then eventually after like 3-4 weeks, I'm like, all right, I can't do this every day though. Like my acid hangovers were like so long. Shrooms made me throw up violently every single time. And ecstasy, I always got called out because people said I looked too happy. I looked. They're like, you don't look like yourself. You're way too happy right now. And for me, that told me like, oh, you shouldn't look happy. You stop doing that. Like, what the fuck was I thinking? So instead, I go into opiates and look sad for a decade. Like, what? Like our addict minds and how they work.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand them. I'm 85 to 90 episodes into my podcast trying to understand their addict minds, and I'm never going to.
No, there's
I'm
no
just
point.
going to keep diving into everybody else's and trying to figure out mine as I go along. This is helping anybody that's listening, but this is really helping me stay sober.
That's all that matters, though. There are certain things that I have to do all the time to keep myself on track. Everybody sits there and asks us, like, how are you doing so well? Like, you're doing so great. I'm fucking making it. Like, I'm getting it one day at a time still. It doesn't matter how much time I have. I will say the obsession has lifted, and that was the biggest problem for me. We could always go back to the feelings or going through what you're going through mentally, but the obsession that kept me back and forth for years, that I can say I'm in a good place to say I don't feel that way anymore. I don't think about it the way I used to. I don't obsess about it. And I also use a needle. So that was even harder, I feel like, for me with any other drug I'd ever done, because it was the whole process that I was addicted to as well.
Oh, I was recording myself sniffing lines all the time like it was sex. You know what I mean? We romanticized the way that we did our drugs.
Oh,
And,
okay,
like I would show off like, oh, look at this huge line I just railed.
I got you.
So, and it is, I was obsessed with the process of breaking up and snorting a pill.
Sure.
Just as much as I was the pill. And I am still obsessed, just not with that. You know what I mean?
Of course.
I'm obsessed with other things. I'm obsessed with sobriety. I'm obsessed with recovery. I'm obsessed with connection. I'm obsessed with putting, content out there and making fun clips. I'm obsessed with finding the right song for the right clip and spending hours picking the right part of the song and making it work, even though 100 people might listen to it. But still, for me, it's that obsession that I love, and it's healthy obsessions. It's about having the right kind of thing. We're always going to be addicts, and it's just a matter of what we're addicted to now. And how is it serving us? Is it healthy? Is it making our lives unmanageable? Are we losing relationships over our obsessions now and our addictions now? That kind of thing, because that's how we're wired, Dana, like.
Yeah. I can relate, though. I have the same obsessions now. I really do. And there's nothing wrong with them. It's keeping me happy, sober, and also connecting. And there was a while where I wasn't connecting with anybody anymore. And it wasn't that I wanted to go back into my old habits. It was just I was on a different path mentally where it wasn't good for me. So connecting for me personally, is what keeps me going and helping people. And we'll get to that, but that's how I got into working into treatment, because I wanted to help people.
Yep.
And somebody helped me at one time.
Yep. And that's the thing too. Yeah, because, someone said to me one time, not said to me, they commented on one of my videos on YouTube. Then they deleted it like I wouldn't see it. But I still see it. If you delete your comment, we still see the original comment before you delete it, just so you know. And the comment said something like, I find it really scary with how much you talk about your past and how you used. Like, it's almost like you romanticize it. And it's like, I feel comfortable enough to talk about it. It doesn't trigger me to talk about.
You're damn right. You're damn right. There was a time where I couldn't talk about it either. You're damn right.
And now I can, because I'm so far removed from it that I have to almost talk about it so that it's a reminder. It's like that toxic relationship. It's that reminder of the good times and the bad times. And you have to just, and I'm okay with talking about it. If you don't like that I'm going to talk about it, then don't tune into my show.
Absolutely.
But, the people I talk to, it's nitty gritty shit. I don't put trigger warnings on my episodes because my entire show is a trigger warning. Just,
of course,
just understand when you watch or listen to my show, we're going to talk about things that might make you uncomfortable. And especially if you've never been in addiction and you just want to hear people talk and you're just listening and just because you're curious, you're going to get really uncomfortable because you're not going to really understand. And then you might fear us a little bit. But that fear is okay. It's okay to fear things. Like I like acronyms. Fear to me used to mean fuck everything and run, and now it's face everything and recover. It's okay to be afraid of things, So now, again, you're doing E. It's mid 2000s. It's Southern Florida. Party scene's wild.
Yeah.
You're not even fucking with opiates yet. You're not even going with downers. E is not a downer. Anyone who's ever did E knows you are not, when you're rolling, you are not down.
No. I mean, you could always have dirty rolls, obviously, that kept you down, which I've had in the past. But no, just the time of when it was, getting out of high school, going into college, that first basically semester that I was there, I partied the whole time. I went to school, but then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it was on. And in Miami, every time you go to a party, there's an after party afterwards. So you might go to a club at 10 o'clock at night, but then you're getting out of a club at 11 a.m. the next day. So that's pretty much was that partying schedule. And I wasn't really letting up from it. And my mom caught on really quickly. Then I was also
even though you weren't living with her.
Wasn't living with her. Oh, she knew. Let me tell you something about that woman. I love her more than anything in the entire world. And she is literally my best friend now. But she is so good at knowing when I'm not okay in whatever situation. She just has to hear my voice. That's all she needs. And she'll be like, yep,
what's wrong?
I know what's going on. Yeah, that's it. Which I love because it's I mean,
it's a testament to the relationship that you built with your mom over the years growing up as an adolescent and as a teenager.
Sure.
To the fact that she'd be able to pick up on those cues. That's what it really comes down to. Yeah. The fact that you were close. You might have fought like a mother and daughter should.
Always.
You should. Have a little combative. There should be a little bit of back and forth. But the whole point is I should be able to call my mom and go, hello, and I should be like, what's wrong? I need to
immediately.
I need my mom to go, what's wrong, JD? That means a lot. I need that. And when she doesn't, I'm hurt.
Yeah.
It's really weird. If my mom doesn't pick up on my cue, then I'm like, all right, I can't talk to you right now. Never mind. Because I'm already so hurt. I was already hurt. And now I'm even more hurt that you didn't hear it.
That you didn't notice.
Mommy. Like I had to have women therapists in rehab because I was, I could only talk to my mom or feel comfortable talking to my mom, that kind of thing. It's not that my dad's a bad guy. It's just that I always felt uncomfortable talking to my dad because we were too similar, and I already knew the answers he was going to give me in a sense because it's almost like I had a conversation with my dad in my head because we think alike so much. And then plus the whole thing of, in the 90s and the 2000s, men's mental health and, opening up to your father. There was a lot of stigma around not being a man if you cry to your dad, and all that stuff. Now it's okay. Now my dad and I, we get very, very vulnerable with each other.
Good.
And we have very, very real talks with each other like we've never had before in these last few years. But that's in the last few. So I can understand the whole like mommy dynamic of like, Dana, what's wrong?
Yeah.
So when was the first time she said that to you?
It wasn't, I don't really, and actually I should have said this before we started this. Like I said, I had been doing drugs for a decade and then I spent so much time getting better. Sometimes I'm off on the dates, times, what happened, whatever. It's human. Like it just kind of is what it is. Sometimes I go back, like the first time I ever recorded a live of like me telling my story and I listened to it, I was like, you fucked up. That wasn't right. Like, I'm just being honest about it. Like, it's taken me a while to go through the past too and kind of, section some things out. But I totally make mistakes and I'm not always right. And I'm really sorry for that. If you follow and you're like, she said something wrong, like, it is what it is. I am 100% not correct a lot. It's the reason why I don't know if I'll ever write a book, even though I should probably write a fucking book. But I'm not doing it because of the fact that I skimmed so much of my life to my family because I'd put them through so much anyway. But also at the same time, I just can't fucking remember. And then other people in my life who do remember, they'll tell me what I need to remember. And I'm like, Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. But anyhow, so mom figured out that things weren't going okay. I was somehow making some money in this time period, but I don't know exactly what I was doing. And she realized that I had a lot more money than I needed to have. So she showed up one morning, not telling me, showed up with movers and said, "You're coming home. I've already talked to your best friend's parents. I will pay the rent till the end until she can find someone." Or I don't even actually know how that happened, to tell you the truth. Something where they worked out, because her and I have been best friends for years. They worked it out, whatever. But she said, "You're coming home and you will do everything I tell you to do." And I was
So
like,
Florida's a big state. How far away is she from Miami when she makes this little trip? Because like,
so about an
Okay.
hour, little whatever. She comes there, she packs me all up and says, "You're coming home." So now I've only completed a semester. I'm pretty much coming home a month before Christmas. So it's still 2003 pretty much. And
Wow,
I,
you went hard fast.
real fast. And then
So fast.
I literally, well, in that time period too, it connected me with a bunch of people that connected me down the line with things that I
And you
did too.
probably went down way before the semester started, I would imagine. If the semester started in August, you were probably down late June, early July, right? Like to get
Well, yeah, we went probably a month beforehand
yeah,
because I also had gone to New York. That was like my last
yeah.
summer. I was
Because
like
if you
spending it in the
weren't
city.
in Florida, you guys start school in August, so you're wrapped by May, right? Because in Jersey
Yes.
for September,
Yeah. No,
June,
no, no. We get done earlier than you guys. So yeah.
you go in August though. You guys would go
Yes.
in August because I remember
Yes.
that because I remember we would go. We went to Disney World a lot as a family growing up, and I remember in the beginning we would go in August because it was less traffic because the Florida people were back at school
Already
then.
back in school. Yeah. Yeah.
And then after like the second time, my dad said, "Fuck this weather. We are never going in August ever again."
Oh
And we
yeah.
started
Don't
going in
come
no,
here then.
we
Don't
started
come
going in
now.
November instead.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
so I ended
yeah.
up. So it was really short lived being in Miami. I wasn't done with school yet, so I was having to drive there and back. Still, my mom's like, "You're still gonna drive there, and you're gonna finish the semester. Then you're gonna transfer over here." So when I came home, I always say this, like when I talk about this, because I don't know if it was the best idea or the worst idea for me to come home, because when I came home, everyone that I went to high school was still pretty much there, and they were doing the same thing, except our partying was harder because we were out of high school and we didn't have so much reins on us. So it
and
became,
and you're in a well-to-do area, right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
So the more like you said, you weren't rich, but you were comfortable.
We were
You were
totally in the nicer
yeah.
part of town.
So
Absolutely.
a bunch of your friends probably had some disposable income where their parents were like traveling and you just had money. Is that what? Because I've heard
Oh,
of that where like, oh
there's
yeah, we would go to like I went to Catholic school for 1 year and we would always hang out at people's houses where the parents were always on business trips and shit because they had so much
absolutely.
money. They always had to travel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I definitely had friends that were like that, and then I had friends that came from nothing. It was definitely a melting pot in that area, but we did come from a really really nice area. But I ended up coming home and realized that everybody was kind of partying. I got a job. I was working with kids at the time. I worked at a. I've always worked with kids. I've always been like a babysitter. I became a nanny, and then I
I would
also
just give
worked
you an
at an
ecstasy.
after school. No, not while I'm doing it.
Dana
You
is
gotta
so
be.
happy when she's watching us.
No, I don't know how anybody could not do ecstasy in like a club scene mentality, or like even at a house party. Like
I
I
did it.
could never
Yeah.
just sit around and like go out during the daytime. Like that's not gonna happen.
The
Like,
first time I did ecstasy, all right, real quick story. First time I did ecstasy, this is how like what is the rule for drugs? Do half, right? That's always the rule is do
always. You
do
always
half.
do half first. Yeah.
So, but I'm a drug addict, so I don't listen to that rule. So it's like 10 o'clock at night. It's 10 o'clock at night on a Friday, and this
Oh,
is
it was
literally
nighttime.
well,
You're
I
good.
had work the next morning. You know what I mean? And
That was your mistake.
my best friends had my key to my apartment because they were always there anyway. So and I worked, so they came in and they come to me and they're like, "Hey, let's do some ecstasy." I was like, "What?" And then they pulled out a baggie, just pills at the bottom of the bag, kind of
Hmm.
thing. And they're like, we just randomly found some E, so do some E with us." and they've never done E before. These are my best friends since first grade. I know this. They never did E. And I'm like, what are you fucking guys talking about? And they're like, I was like, I'm just gonna relax. And they're like, all right, I guess we're gonna have the drug that you have never done. Like, fuck, give me 2.
Yeah.
Like, that's all it took.
Give me 2. I don't know what they are. They're probably the most potent shit in triple stacks. But let me get 2 of them.
And he goes, yeah. They're like, oh yeah, it's G's up, hose down. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that means, but I'll take 2.
Take 2 of them.
Pop 2. And then next thing you know, it hit me as we were driving over to Walt Whitman Bridge to hang out at our buddy's apartment in Philly. But that's all we did was hang out at my buddy's apartment in Philly. So, but I did do it at a house party, and then that's when someone's like, "You look really, really happy right now. Like almost too happy. Like almost like you might be on ecstasy kind of happy." And I'm like, "I'm just really happy. I don't know what to fucking tell you." But I was.
Oh, happy. You know what? That's. I don't know why it just reminded me of this, but when I was in Miami towards the time that I was actually, my mom came and got me. I remember one night that we were all going out and I was the one person that decided that wanted to drop ecstasy and nobody else did. And I can tell you that was a very pivotal moment for me because I realized that I like drugs more than other people, or at least the people that I was around at the time. And that I was willing to take an ecstasy by myself and go out while everybody wasn't, which usually I feel like ecstasy was a lot more fun when it was like a whole group setting and everybody was doing it together. Yeah. But yeah. I was over here just taking them by myself, or we were just going out for a little bit, and I realized then that
hey, Dana, what are you up to? I got to study. I'm going to drop some E and I'm going to study, and then I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to put some coffee on.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I realized then that there was something not, I could tell you then that was one of those moments where I was like, there's something a little bit off about me. But anyways, I ended up coming back home. Everybody was starting in the partying scene. But everybody was taking ecstasy but couldn't get ecstasy. And then at the same time, everybody was also starting to live on their own, or they were living the same area, but just in the surrounding areas. West Palm Beach is huge. It's a huge area. So they might not have lived in Wellington, but they were living around, and people, were renting houses together and this and that. So house parties were huge, and people were, taking a lot more different drugs, but ecstasy was huge and everybody wanted it. Nobody could really find it as much as they wanted to.
You happen to be going to school where you travel to for classes and where you have plenty of connections. And then Dana becomes the person that has the E.
Yes, it's exactly how that happened.
I can just see it right on the wall.
Yeah, one quick trip is all it took, and I started realizing that everybody was doing it, and we were all doing it together. I was totally partaking in all of these parties. Sometimes people would find them around town, but I could find them. I could always just make a phone call, take an hour drive there and an hour drive back, and we had what we needed for however long. So that's what started. I already was doing my introduction into selling pretty much started.
Were you dosing on the way back? Were you dosing on the way back, knowing that it was going to hit you by the time you were, weren't you? I knew it. You're like, all right, I got 45 minutes till I'm there. I'm going to take this now, and boom, party's going to start when I walk through the door.
So one of my friends and I. All right, so listen. So one of my girlfriends and I, we took the trip, just her and I, one time. I didn't roll really deep in there because I knew better then that connection was my connection. You know what I'm saying? Like the mentality of doing drugs and also having that connection. I knew that was my connection, and I was not giving it up because I knew the connection.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew the connections that he had. Anyhow, so I went and I picked him up. I was just with a girl of mine, and she was like, we should take him on the way, And I'm like, yeah, for sure. So he calls me while I'm driving. He's like, hey, Day, I totally forgot to tell you that these are like way stronger, and they're more dirty. So dirty would be like their downers. And I was like, oh. He's like, so you should probably wait till like you get, just make sure you are where you are for the night, because I took him the other night and like it was way down. I'm like, dude, I just popped it. He's like, all right, you might as well just come turn around and come hang with me then. He's like, because you're not making it that drive down. And I was like, no, I got this. I was like, I got this.
I got it.
Fucking driving the whole way. Finally, my friend next to me's like, you good, Dana? I'm like, I am totally fine. Chill. I was always the driver because I never really drank. I'm like, I'm good. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I'm like, I am not okay. I am not all right. Like, no, we're good. We're good. We're driving. We're driving. I remember this entire experience just blowing up, trying to get to where I was, where there was probably 50 people waiting for all the pills that I had anyway. So, and I'm sitting there just completely blowing up the entire time.
Is it daytime or nighttime?
Nighttime. I never took ecstasy during the day.
Fuck. So
never took ecstasy during
the highway lights are hitting off your car too. So
it's kind of like being a video game.
It's like that stream of like that Tron. It's like your Tron. It's like that. Oh, like yeah. Oh my god.
But I fucking made it. I made it.
Well, no, I've been there. I was always a driver.
Always. Same with me. I was always the driver. Always the driver.
I had to be. I remember one time. This was the worst trip I ever drove. It was for my best friends, and we went to Canada. And this is when you could go into Canada with just your ID, and you didn't need a passport. This was like 2008, and we were leaving Canada. It was our friend's 21st birthday that weekend. He got so smashed, I mean smashed. And we're in line waiting to cross the border, and he's in the back seat, and there's another guy in the middle, and they're squished in the back seat, and me, I'm driving, and my other friend, he's like a big guy too. He's in the passenger. And our friend's like, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to throw up. I'm like, dude, you can't throw up when we're at the fucking border. Like, just let me get through the border because this is like, we have so much paraphernalia in the trunk. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Like all these bongs and shit and like, do not. As soon as we cross the border, I start like on this long road of all these empty warehouses, Niagara Falls and New York side. And he's just half his body out the window, just vomiting. And we're recording it and laughing and having a good time. And then they all pass out. And then I'm like the dad because they all pass out. And then finally I hit traffic and then they all wake up bitching. I'm like, I'm going to turn this fucking car right. So
right now.
It was one of the worst 9-hour drives of my life. I couldn't wait to get home and smoke some weed.
This episode is sponsored by MJ's Progress Not Perfection Meeting Center Association. We are in our meeting center where we do all these meetings for mental health and addiction. I can do this podcast anywhere. I can do this at home. I can do this in a closet. I can do this in a basement. It doesn't matter. All I need is somebody else to talk to about addiction and recovery. What I can't do from anywhere is help people with their addiction and their mental health problems. So if you can help out, we do have a Venmo, we have a Cash App, we have a PayPal, we have an address you can send a check to, and, all the money that gets donated goes towards rent, goes towards keeping the lights on, and goes towards keeping the internet on. So please, if you can give $5, $10, $20, it doesn't matter. Anything you can is so appreciated. And if you are a local business, if you're a national business, whatever, and you want to be a part of what we're doing, you can reach out to me and we can talk about how you can be a sponsor. But I'll let you get back to the episode.
All right, so that's a long trippy drive back home, but you made it. So
yeah. So anyhow, the whole part of being, people using ecstasy and me being around it, and it was just that time. Everybody was doing it. Everybody was partying. We were doing house parties. There was a lot of free love and a whole lot of experimentation in that time with people and everybody hooking up with everybody, which I don't really think was a really great idea because it also caused a lot of issues within the whole community of friendships. Yeah,
no way.
But you don't
no
care
way.
then,
No way.
It got to that point where, I think everybody had hooked up with everybody at that point. But it was a really, I can't say anything bad about that time because it was a really great time. It was the calm before the storm, I feel like sometimes, because that was just the innocent partying, working, still going to school, still managing my life, still just experimenting. And then it wasn't anymore. Then it just became a different chapter.
It's the honeymoon phase.
It really is. 100%.
It's the honeymoon. It's the pink cloud equivalent to being a drug addict.
Of course it is.
When your life's not in shambles, your family doesn't even know that you even experiment, and maybe they know that you drink or you smoke, but they don't know the depths of what you do. And you have it pretty well managed, and you still have the job. It's definitely the pink cloud effect.
And I was living at home at the time, so I'm like 19 now, and I'm living at home, and my mom's always like, "You need to come kiss me when you come in the door." Absolutely, I'm not drinking, so of course I am. There was no, you know what I mean. So it was just that type of drugs that everybody was doing. We experimented to the fullest. Cocaine also came onto the table then. But the
coke in Miami? No way.
I wasn't in Miami now, but I was also definitely.
Florida?
Yeah, I know.
No way.
But that's when I started experimenting with cocaine as well. But it was really just the ecstasy, the Xanax bars to come down. You know what I mean?
So coke was the first thing you snorted then, because you're not snorting Xannies, you're not snorting E, you're just popping. Correct. So now all of a sudden you discover what does for you.
Yeah. So then I started on that just a little bit, but at the time, like I said, I was working with kids, and I actually contracted MRSA from working in where I was working. Didn't know much about it, but I had like an abscess on my I don't remember where it was, but I had my first abscess, and I went to the doctor, and they lanced it, they extracted it, they gave me medication. And of course, what did they give me for pain? Oxy. Yep.
What year was this?
This had to be 2004 now.
Okay, so did you watch Dopesick?
Oh yeah. Okay. Actually, our live this weekend is about Dopesick.
Can I hop on that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Because I've been wanting to talk about it like in full.
Yeah.
Because I've already watched it a couple times. I was only triggered one time. And I don't know about you, but the only time I was triggered was when Michael Keaton sniffed his first pill.
I wasn't triggered.
Well, not that it wasn't that I was triggered. It was more like I felt what he felt.
I felt what the girl felt after the explosion. When she was sitting there and she said, "I don't know what's wrong with me." I remember that day, that pivotal moment where I was like, what the fuck is going on with me? Like, I am not okay anymore.
Now, is your husband a normie?
My husband is total partier and totally has done every drug known to man, and definitely can drink with the best of them. But is he like me? No. Has he had those experiences? Sure, few and in between. But would I label him someone? He totally did opiates. He was one of the people that did opiates at parties and realized that he was fucking taking them all the time and realized he was sick. And once he came to that realization and stopped doing them, he was done. He didn't go through what I went through. You know?
I said in I think it's important that when we feel something or think something, you just say it. You're right. So as soon as, his character sniffed that 80, and then the way he sat back on the couch from the coffee table.
I get that.
I said to my wife, "Oh, I felt that."
Yeah.
And she was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "I know that heaviness of Michael." Let me just tell you this: Michael Keaton is an amazing actor.
He did really well.
The way that he sat back was I almost get chills thinking about it. And again, I'm not romanticizing him because I want to do it. I'm romanticizing it because it was just a part of my life at which I loved.
Totally, I totally get that.
Now.
Oh,
so for the audience, I know. So, but the way he sat back and that. I could feel the heaviness of his body, of the sit back on the edge of the couch after you come back from the coffee table.
Absolutely.
That was the only time where I went, "Oh, there it is." I felt that one.
Yeah.
And I said to my wife, it's important that I just say it out loud, because if I don't say it out loud, then it gets stuck up here. Then it bounces up around in my head. Of course. And then my mind plays tricks on me, and that's when that relapse starts happening because your head.
I watched it I binge watched it, and I called Tara, and I was like, she's like, we should do something fun for Christmas. And I was like, no. I was like, honestly, I'm feeling this way. I was like, I just watched this. And the real reason why I wanted to talk about it is because at the end of the day, for the past 15 years of my life that I've gone through, being in treatment, being an addict, going through it all. I should say this. Going through being in addiction and then being off of addiction, those are two jobs, correct? Like 100%. And you're constantly always working at it. But I never stopped to know where it all came from. I never paid attention to the backstory. I never knew why they were so accessible. I didn't understand why a whole generation went through this problem just like I did. I didn't know the backstory. I will say that fully at 36 years old, I literally had no idea the backstory until I watched it. And then I didn't just go there. I have been on a fucking rampage of documentaries.
You watch HBO?
Oh yeah, I'm watching it right now. The Crime of the Century. I'm watching it right now. When we get off the phone, that's what I'm watching today because I want to watch the second part. Because now it all makes sense. Everything that was going on, why it was so easy for me to get pills and whale doctors that I could find. And we can get, all right, we're not there. Let's digress.
This episode is going to come out after the fact. So if you want to hear more about our thoughts on dopesick, go to Plant Curing's Instagram or Canna Mindful, and you're going to see a live from Sunday, December 19th, Sunday, December 19th. You're going to see it live, and we're going to be talking about it there. I'm going to leave it with this, though, with dopesick, is if you've ever been to the hospital and you've ever seen the doctor say to you, here's a chart of how do you feel 1 to 10, that is those motherfuckers from Purdue that implemented that over 20 years ago just as an excuse so they can give out oxy to everybody.
You're damn right.
They still have the chart because now it's pertinent for the doctors to, have some kind of scale. That they're not giving you oxy, but that originated because of Purdue trying to find more ways to slip you more oxy in the hospitals and not just from your, PCP, your practicing, care physician.
That chart makes me fucking sick. How many times have we seen it? How many times?
Yep. And now I've seen it after the fact too, because I've been
so then your mind is like
hospital and they're like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm like, fuck that scale.
Fuck that scale. Don't even let me see that scale.
Let me see Purdue's label on that scale now.
Thank you.
See. So no, I get all heated too. I get all heated. So
oh my God, so heated.
Tomorrow. We're going to have a fun talk tomorrow.
Yeah.
I might watch Dopesick again today just so
God.
Because I watch week to week. I was so excited. I watched week to week.
I fucking watched the whole thing through. I couldn't stop watching it.
Yeah.
Because it just was, it's the time. It's the time when we grew up. It's the time when we grew up. It's what we went through. It doesn't matter where you were in the fucking world.
I don't want to say it justifies it. I don't want to say it justifies our addiction.
But it makes sense now.
It makes me feel so much better. Like, it makes me feel so much better that it's not just me. I know it wasn't just me, but I mean, like, the rewiring of the mind, that is what's made me feel the best. The fact that even that doctor, that Keaton played, didn't understand how his mind was rewired, literally rewired.
Yes.
And then that explanation that other doctor gave to him, that sub doctor gave to him, it justified so much for me as somebody in recovery to the point where I was like, oh, and then for the last 3.5 years, I just been rewiring my mind back to what it was, pre-22, when I was just an adolescent. So I'm still just like, do you watch Shameless?
I have, but I'm not up to date with it.
Okay, yeah. But like Frank does that where he's like, if somebody dies and then Frank goes on this huge binge.
Yeah. I remember that.
After Monica died. And then he's like, all of a sudden he's Frank at 20 years old. He's like Frankie. Yes. And then he's like Francis. And then like, now he is like this, it's like the same thing. And we're just now getting our maturity back mentally as we go along.
Yeah.
And
on my last relapse, which was the best relapse I ever had because it was a decision for me to really stop everything and to actually, really put in the same, like the work that I did on my last relapse. It was the time where I shut my mouth. I didn't know anything. And I had been working in treatment too. So like, I felt like I knew everything, but I really didn't. And I remember going into the doctor. I knew the doctor that I wanted to go to. I knew the medication that I was going to use. I knew the whole thing of what I wanted to do. And I walked in there with a plan and he was like, so do you want to actually get sober? And I was like, yeah, I have this whole plan. He's like, well, I'm going to say this as nicely as I possibly can. Fuck your plan. I need for you to shut your mouth and listen. He's like, you are such a pillar in this community and you have such a high-powered job and you help people. Well, we're going to help you now. And I looked at him and I was like, all right, whatever. He's like, and you're going to do everything I tell you to do this time around because he's like, I want you to fucking make it. He's like, there's no reason that you can't.
And that's your rock bottom.
You can do this. And that was my rock bottom. That was my rock bottom for me, even though there were so many worse times. But that one looked at me and he was like, and you didn't lose a thing this time around and you could have. He's like, but you're not going to tell me how I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
You are going to use the things that you've learned to help you along the way of what I want to do. with someone like you who's been chronically relapsing for 10 years, but also has had times of sobriety.
Yep. I talked about that with Tara, how like our lows are our lows. We all have different lows.
Yeah.
But you literally can't hit rock bottom, means there's no more further to go. And then when you hit rock bottom is when you either die and stay there, or you decide to start crawling out and doing something different. Yeah. You're literally saying, okay, tell me how to do this better because I can't do this on my own. Yeah. To me, that's a rock bottom, because that's when you start climbing out. Yeah. I think we all have different lows. You know, I definitely think that my lows are worse than my rock bottom sometimes. Mm-hmm. But really, that rock bottom, the hardest thing to do is surrender. The hardest thing to do is say, I don't know how to do this alone and I need help. Yeah, getting arrested sucks. Losing friends sucks. Losing family sucks. You know, losing yourself sucks. But that bottom where you can't go down any further and you have to start going up, that is when you surrender and you say, I need help. Someone help me. The hardest thing I ever did was ask for help the first time for rehab. And now I'm okay with asking for help for anything, because I've already broke my governor with asking for help. If I can ask for help with rehab, I can ask you for help with anything, you know? So
the first time I ever went to rehab, I was honest about it because I was told to be honest about it.
Let's get into that. But when did you get into rehab the first time?
Hold on, I'm going to go back for just a second though, because when this last time, I knew myself. I'm the one that told on myself. And when I went to this doctor, that's when he explained to me about my brain and being rewired, and the way that what I've been doing for the past 10 years, going back and in and out and in and out, and how he wanted to help my brain get back to where it needed to be and then progress in a different way. And that's the first time I ever had heard that. And it was the first time it ever made sense to me. And nobody really talked to me like that before. So when he said that, it was like, okay, I understand now. I've always known that. I've always known that it messes with your brain, but I didn't think about how it was messing with my brain. I always thought about others because I was always helping others. Anyhow, all right. So let's go back. We're at my ecstasy stage. We're at the cocaine stage. Then I got MRSA. Then I got prescribed oxys. Okay, so the first time I ever got prescribed them, they were like a really, really low dose. I took them as prescribed, but I'll never forget the first time I ever took them. And I was in the car with my mom, and I was fucking loaded. And my mom was like, what is going on with you? Like, he told her pain medicine might make me, you know, whatever. Loopy. But I was fucked up, like totally fucked up. Anyhow, so I got through MRSA. I had a really, I honestly, it also fueled, the worst part of it is because since I already had MRSA before, then when I started on needles, it just made it 10 times worse. It was so bad for me. Anyhow, so I ended up getting these pills and it's taking them, whatever. And then I realized at a party one night that people were actually taking them. They were taking them and snorting them. And I had no idea that people were doing this. And I was like, I just had that prescription recently. I had taken it as prescribed, whatever. And then I was kind of done with it. And I'm noticing all of these people taking it. So I literally, the first time I ever took it was a very low dose that the doctor gave me. Like
10s or 20s.
Probably 10s, you know, something really,
you're a
really
19-year-old girl.
I'm 19 and 20 at this point. Like it was
it's not
really
a serious
it's
not a serious injury. You're probably pain scale was like probably a 5 or a 6. So he's like, I got to give you 10s. I'm not going to give anything.
I don't think it was anything more than that.
No refills probably either, right?
No. Yep. No. So the first time that I ever saw the 80s was this day. And basically, you know, my friend was like, you know, you want to try them? I was like, yeah, sure. I was like, I've already kind of taken them before. She's like, yeah, but we snort them. I was like, okay. So I literally snorted a whole 80 and knew that whole feeling of going back like Michael Keaton had just did. And then probably 15, 20 minutes fucking threw up. And then I was like, the next day, I'm like, we're doing this again. And that's exactly how it started.
Our fucking minds, Dana. Did you hear what you just said in that order? You're like, I did it. It felt good. I threw up, and then I wanted it more.
Yep. It's exactly how that went.
We are so fucked up. It's ridiculous.
And then I was on that spiral of doing them. People were selling them. You know, the 80s were everywhere. Then the 40s were everywhere. Roxy 30s were everywhere too.
That was my baby. That was my love. Yeah.
That was my love.
I was too lazy. 80s. I was too lazy for 80s.
Thank you. Me too.
I didn't like the hangover from the 80s either. Roxy never gave me a hangover.
Me either.
And then plus I discovered them in 2008. So 2009 OPs replaced OCs.
Yes.
And so I only took OPs as Suboxone basically. I would get like 20s if I had to, because they were only like $10 a piece because they were OPs. And then when I couldn't find 30s, I would just pop the 20s just to keep me maintained until I would get Roxy again. But when it came down to it, 9.5 years, only Roxy's. Because I love them so much.
Me
too. I knew I was addicted a month in, and I was completely okay with it because I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah. I kind of feel the same way. I mean, the first time I ever tried, like I said, I tried the 80s at that potency level, and then Roxy's. I learned what Roxy's were really quickly afterwards, and people were smoking them, and then I tried smoking them, so I was smoking them, and then it went to just fully snorting them or smoking them and snorting them, depending on whatever it was. But then I realized that everybody had them and people were making money, and I started talking to some of the guys that I had already done business with before when it came to the ecstasy. And he kind of broke it all down as to what was going on in Florida, that I could send people to the doctor and that, you know, you could hit so many counties.
You were in the Mecca. You were in the Roxy Mecca in this country.
Yes. Like, and I was in the middle too. Being in West Palm, you've got Miami, so you've got Dade County, then you've got Fort Lauderdale, you got Broward County, then you got West Palm Beach, you got Palm Beach County, then you've got Martin County. So you could hit really 4 counties in a day.
I'm gonna
send several people.
I'm doing a panel this morning with like 6 different girls from Ohio that have already been on my show.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, her and her husband, they were in addiction together for like 17 years.
Wow.
They've been, clean and sober together like a few years, like 3 years now.
That's fabulous.
But for like 5 of those years, they were driving from Ohio 22 hours, 7 times a month to you.
I believe it.
And then driving back to Ohio. I know 3 different dealers from Jersey that once a month will go down to Florida, hit like 3 different places, and then drive back up with like 2,000 pills.
Well, they made it very easy too. I mean, I always say this, they made it so fucking easy for us, especially for us drug dealers too. I mean, once I started getting the habit of using them and then realized that this is something I'm doing every day, before I realized that I was an addict and I was addicted to them, I knew that I could make money off them and everybody around me was doing them. So it was time for me to find them. I also was those people too that paid stupid prices to get them and was whatever. But when I realized that I could actually send people to the doctor, that's kind of when things shifted. Plus, at that time, there was a shift between me and my friends that I grew up with forever. I was really getting into them more than I think they were. There were a couple of girls as well that were really getting into them. And then I had done the whole doctor thing like 1 or 2 times. I was really bad off on them. I was buying them all the time. Now I'm stealing at this time, stealing from my family, doing all this stuff. And then my mom catches up with me again and was like, what is going on with you? And I tell her, I'm honest with her. I pull out all these pill bottles out of my bag and I'm like, I'm fucking taking these like crazy. So she doesn't know what to do. So she calls, remember those information phone lines that you could call back in the day? She calls one of those. They tell her that I'm an addict now. And then I need to go to rehab. So she finds a detox for me and she finds a rehab for me to go to. My parents spend stupid fucking money for me to do this. I go into the detox. I'm in a detox now so at this time, my using level had got up to a really, really high. Now I'm taking oxys, I'm taking Roxys. I haven't hit heroin yet, and I'm just snorting at this point too, or smoking them. I go through a 15-day detox because in the time too, I was also throwing methadone wafers in there as well because I had learned,
Because why not?
Because why not? And Xanax. So I would think at this point I was taking, the first time I went to rehab, I was taking Xanax, I was taking methadone wafers, I was taking the oxys, and I was taking the Roxys. I hadn't tried heroin yet, and I was still only sniffing this stuff or smoking them. So then I went ahead, went into rehab, and I went to a detox program, I think for 2 weeks. And then I went to a 60-day program. And that was just a crash course for me to learn how to do drugs better, how to get around in the system, how to use our system for money or to take care of ourselves. I basically leveled up as a drug addict, I felt like, from that experience. Came home, stayed sober for a little bit, was done, was back out at the races again. This is when I really learned more about the doctors and the pill mills. I learned about it a little bit, had dabbled in it a little bit. This time around, I knew that I needed to make a really big go for it. And this is when the separation of my friends and I really came into play. I grew up with these people for years, and I was just on a different level. And I started hanging out with people that were on a different level too. But yet I was living a double life because my family still thought I was okay. And I was still going to work. I was still doing what I needed to do. I was 100% a functioning addict at that time. So I would go to my day job, during the daytime. And then depending on what time I was done, then I was down to my other job where I was sending people to the doctor all day. And got involved with some people I shouldn't have. Then ended up having a stash house of where we were kind of, running out of and having all of our pills. When you're taking so many people to the doctor when they're going every single day for you, you're paying for those visits. It was like the first transaction kind of happened where I went and I told, I did the first one and I realized how much I could make back from it, plus also have the pills for myself. It was just a domino effect. Then it just grew to a business pretty much. Then it just grew to people who I was doing business with. And then it became a point where I was doing everything. I'm trying not to get into so much of everything because
I get it. No, I know how. Well, no, and I know how the
doctors be careful.
Yeah,
I have to be careful too because I should have been in prison for the rest of my life, in all honesty, for things that I were doing, and I ended up not getting in trouble for it. I went to jail for some things, but it wasn't what I could have gone to jail for. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I've had some really scary times or some different scary situations with the law that I thought I was going to get in trouble for, but I didn't. And then I learned how to put them on the take pretty much, some of them. Like, it was just a whole domino effect of things that I don't even know if I should really be saying that, but like there was a whole domino effect of all things that I were doing. Yeah. So basically I went to rehab, learned how to become a better drug dealer and drug addict. And that's when needles were introduced to me too. And I learned how to use that. And then Roxy's I was shooting Roxy's instead of just sniffing them. And I'm taking all these people to the doctors. And now I'm in this whole world. Now I'm a woman in this world of men making money and having to be this tough mentality all the time, which I'm not that person. Like I can be tough when I need to be, but in actuality, I didn't want to live that life. And now I'm living a double life too, because I'm still going home to my family and to my jobs and friends and things like this. But yet there's a shift. I don't hang out with them as much. And now I'm hanging out with all these other people.
Yeah.
My mom at that point realized that I wasn't going to stop and I wasn't going to stop anything I was doing. I also moved out at that point. At somewhere between the line, I had moved out and I was doing my thing. She really cut me off completely. 100% completely.
Exactly what she needed to do.
And I totally respect that and understand that. And I got to a point where I was doing some things that I really shouldn't have done. And I was messing with some people I really shouldn't have. I also didn't realize what they were really doing either. There comes a point in time when you're messing with people where everybody's lying. You don't really know the full story of everything that's going on. And I had a couple close calls with certain things. And
that's how that life goes though. You're getting in with these people and then, the thing is, and we've all been there, is this person doesn't want to show all their cards. You don't want to show all your cards. You tell that person what you think that person wants to hear. That person tells you what that person thinks you want to hear. And then that is what the basis of your relationship or working relationship or, business relationship is based on, is whatever you say. But really, like, the thing is that always gets us in trouble is the things that we're not saying. Yeah. That's what always gets us in trouble. How long were you running like that, before you landed into another rehab?
So in between that time period, there was a place around here called DAF that you could go into detox and dry out. I had done that several times and then would go into a sober house and then right back out with my bullshit. I thought that if I kept myself living in a sober house but still doing everything I needed to do, it would somehow keep me on a level, but it never did. Then I got myself into, I had a really bad scare where I got pulled over. So this is when heroin got introduced as well. So now you're getting to the point where Roxys aren't readily available as much as they would be. The doctors are starting to really like shut down a little bit. I'm not able to do this stuff with these doctors anymore. These people that I had going, some of them are falling off. Some people are telling on themselves. Some people are going to jail. It's like the Wild West at this point. There's something, you are constantly watching your back. You're always worried about something. And on top of that, you're trying to keep up your drug habit the entire time. So you're all fucked up. Well, then I was getting into the heroin. I took a drive to Miami, got a very large amount that I should have never had on me, got pulled over in my town. And when I got pulled over in my town, the cops searched everything. I had somebody in the front seat with me and she was freaking out. And I'm like, you need to fucking keep your shit together right now. Otherwise, we're going to jail. We're going to jail. And she kept her shit together a little bit, but not really. They had us get out of the car, look through everything. At that point, I think I already known that people knew that I was a drug dealer at that point. He skimmed right over that package. I don't know why I didn't get in trouble that night. I don't know why I didn't go to jail that night. I have absolutely no idea. I don't know if he saw it and just kept on going because of maybe knowing me or whatever. I don't know. I have absolutely no idea how that happened, but I will tell you that by having a certain address on my license has gotten me out of a lot of shit. And a lot.
I thought white privilege doesn't exist.
100% it does.
I'm 100%. I should have went to jail so many times,
so many times.
Got in trouble, and I should have, when I got sober, I had charges pending from in addiction, right? And then on my 9-month anniversary, I went to, my hearing, that had been waiting from getting arrested for having pills, and they pulled me over in a school zone, and I had weed, and it wasn't medical at the time, and I didn't go there with a lawyer. I went there by myself, and I asked to speak to a prosecutor. I told her that you can throw the book at me. I'm guilty of what happened. I'm 9 months sober. And she was like, did we ask you to go to court? And I said, or go to rehab? And I said, no, honestly, I was high as hell in your preliminary hearing. And then I put myself in rehab. And when I was flying out to LA, I realized that I had court in 2 weeks because I completely forgot about you guys.
Yeah.
And I went to rehab because I was tired of living that life. So really, there's nothing that you can do to me in drug court that's going to upset me. I'll piss for you every single week if you need me to.
Right.
And then she's like, oh, we have no point of putting you in the system because you obviously want to be sober anyway. And then just dropped all charges and gave me $800 fine. That never would have happened if no matter how honest people are. Let's be real. So, and people are like, oh, no, that's not white privilege. That's just you being a good guy. Okay, cool. Anyway,
listen, we could get into that all day, but I will tell you what, I have one story that I knew then that I was different and it wasn't good because it was right at that time where I started, just came back from rehab. I was hanging out with people I shouldn't have. I was going to get some pills. We got pulled over. I was in a car full of people that had a different address than me, and I had never been in trouble before or just basically had a different address at that point. He pulls me out of the car, runs everything. I'm the one that has all the pills on me. He dumps them out of my purse and stomps on them. And he goes, I just saved your life. He's like, now we're going to go call your mom. As everyone else is getting arrested, my mother came and picked me up that night. I was like, I want to say 20.
Yeah. Okay. So
I knew then.
Yeah. Let's replay this back. The person who had the pills on her did not get arrested, and the cop just stepped on him and said, I saved your life. Hey, officer, you just saved me time. No, I'm just kidding. Yep. But the cop just steps on him. And then the people who didn't possess them, but just were a party to the person that possessed them, got arrested.
Yes.
Were they also white? Those people you were friends with that were in the car with you, or no?
Some, but some not.
But their addresses weren't.
Their address was not from Wellington, Florida, which was considered to be a nice area.
Apartment this or
They didn't know who my parents were. They didn't know if they had money or not, type thing. So I feel like sometimes they didn't want to fuck with you. I say this lightly because I have respect for both sides. I see both sides right now with everything. But I also know at that time, and also the things that I was doing,
This is
and
2009,
the dirty
2010?
cops that I had dealt with. No, this is maybe 2006, 2005 at the most. I knew then that there was something off about things. And that's just my experience. Now being in a different headspace and having a different life, my interactions with law enforcement are totally different. And I've always had to worry about things too, because my husband does have a felony and they always look at him for that. Even though he was 21 and it's a driving felony, he always gets looked at like he's doing something wrong. He gets pulled out of the car, he gets searched. And I'm like, he was 21, he's 37 now. Go fuck yourself. Like it's a different story, but I have nothing but respect and admiration for people who do their jobs and give back to the community. But at the same time, in my lifetime, my story, my personal experiences, I have seen some pretty shitty things, and I've seen some things that have happened where I've questioned, like, okay. But anyways, so I ended up, I don't even know where we are now. Man.
You're going on a run of discovering heroin.
Okay, so found heroin, found needles in that time period. Ended up having that scare where I almost thought I was going to go to jail that night. Was taking an obscene amount, was not making the money that I used to. Now I'm going back into not being this high person of dealing and having everything I want. I'm totally doing my product, totally doing everything, having people pissed off. Person I was seeing at the time, I used to be really stealth about things. I'd leave in one car and then go drive around and do something and come back in another car. I had like a beater for when I did all of my crazy stuff, and then I would drive my nice car back into Wellington or whatever.
You drive the beater in Wellington, you stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. So I really could, but it's just, you got to keep up appearance. You got to keep up that everything's okay. So I ended up coming home one night, and the person who I was seeing had a gun to his head by the people that I was dealing with. And I realized at that point that my life had completely gone down a different change. I left with them. I didn't come home for 2 days. The person who I was with was obviously very frantic and freaking out. But I came home and I was like, don't worry, I have a different deal. Everything's okay. And at that point, that person was like, you know what? We're fucking done. Like you've hit it a whole nother level where you don't give a shit about anybody but yourself. And I'm like, you're probably right. So that didn't stop me, but I realized I was on a different course. And there was a combination of things that were really going on. I don't remember what led me to my next point where I decided to go back into rehab, but I went to a rehab that was basically like a boot camp. Those women in there fucking broke me down and built me back up. The first week I was there, they made me wear a sign that said, I'm a drug dealer. Then my next one was, I make women sell their body for drugs. I take food out of kids' mouths. The whole 9 that you could possibly do to break you down is what they did. But then they built you back up. But that was the first rehab that I had realized that.
It reminds me of those dog shaming pictures when the dog eats like a stuffed animal and they put like the placard around the dog's neck and take a picture like, I shit in the kitchen. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. It was. Let me tell you something though. It opened my eyes to things that I wasn't seeing because I didn't sell my body. I didn't have kids at the time. Those 2 things I'm very grateful in my addiction that I didn't go through. Yes, I was put in a lot of different situations. Yes, I had to defend myself. I've had guns drawn on me. I've had a lot of things happen when you're a part of that world. I've watched things happen to people that I didn't think would ever get out of my mind. I've seen it all, like sometimes I feel like there's a movie playing in my head when I have to relive some things. And
so that rehab worked. So that rehab,
did work make me until it didn't. I mean, it made it work until I realized that there was something majorly wrong. And this was my first taste of real recovery. And when I got done, I ended up meeting somebody, obviously in treatment. I was with her for a very long time. She lied to me about her age, about everything about her. But when we got out, we were both trying to stay sober. That didn't work for very long. But then I realized that I could not stay in Florida anymore. I had to get the fuck out of here. Not to mention I had a lot of bad people that were trying to fuck me up at that point. So I left. I moved to Alabama with her. When we got there, people didn't really accept women being with women. I'm a bisexual woman, so it's not really good. Plus, I look like I'm Hispanic, but I'm not. I'm Italian. So everybody thought I was Mexican and gay. So it wasn't really the great, there's still a lot of.
It's not like you were in Vermont where like New Hampshire.
I just really wasn't accepted. People wanted to, me to go to church and get better. And like, that's how the mentality was. I ended up meeting a great group of people at one point, but I was trying to she just could not stay clean and I wanted to. It didn't matter how much I was trying, she was pulling me down. Finally, we got ourselves settled there. And this was the first time I was introduced to methadone. And I didn't really know much about it. The program they have there was, at that time, back in 2009. Oh, I skipped a step. I got arrested. So, okay. So sorry. See what I'm saying? Like, I can't remember shit sometimes.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. So, go ahead. But 2009 Alabama.
2009 was when I got arrested. So I got out of that treatment center. I was doing good for a while. I got a job, I got a real job. I was working somewhere, but then I realized that they were doing some shady shit and I was help them how to do some shady shit better. And then obviously the police came in and,
At a treatment center?
No. The first time that I ever got in trouble with the police coming in questioning me was at a treatment center, the one that I was at.
Which one?
I don't know how it happened. The one that I went to that was kind of
never mind. The one I'm thinking of. Okay, never mind. Okay, the one I'm thinking of is much.
But it was state ran, and I also had to have family members sign me in. It was it was through the courts thing.
Well, because I know
they had total access to do that.
Yeah, I grew up with a dude that started a treatment center in, fucking Delray that got shut down and raided, and he's doing time or looking at time because of all the shit they were falsifying with UAs.
Do you know how many people I know like that?
But it was a place in Delray in 2014. It got shut down and raided.
I probably know it.
You probably do, yeah.
Probably know it because at that point I was working in treatment.
And a guy on my show was actually across the street watching the raid happening.
Oh, I'm sure. I had to call the cops on places before. I had to go in with a baseball bat one time and get a girl that was fucking chained to a bed. I had to bring 5 guys about your size with me, and I didn't give a fuck. Oh, yeah. I stormed through that door, got the 3 girls that I knew were in there, and fucking called the cops and watched them burn. And walked right up to one of these motherfuckers and said, let me tell you something. You're bringing out the prison in me, and I don't give a fuck. You have these girls chained to these beds. Are you fucking kidding me?
Okay, so that's crazy that they were chained to the fucking bed like that. Like I fucking hate people.
I've seen some crazy things in my time when it came to working in treatment. But anyways, let's go back to where we're supposed to be because I just
you're in Alabama.
You're in
Alabama.
Listen, hold on. I gotta go. So wait, I get arrested. I get arrested for being a part of this business in Florida. Really, I'm not going to get too much into it. Anyhow, I get a get out of jail free card. They said that I could move as well. And I'm like, I got to get the fuck out of here. That was the first time I ever went to jail. It was one of my scariest experiences that I ever had. I had police officers come and talk to me before. I had them come and talk to me while I was in the treatment center, the state-run facility before this happened, and basically told me, the jig's up. We know what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And I basically told them, well, I'm more afraid of the people that I'm working with than you. So I have no problem telling them what's going on. But if you're going to charge me, you can charge me and we'll take care of it then. And that's what I did. And I never heard anything about it again. And I didn't go searching for it either because I was like, what's done is done. I went to those people and said, I'm done. I'm going to rehab. We're done with everything. And I pretty much walked away. And I don't even know how I walked away from that. But anyhow, I get out of treatment, doing good, get a job, get all mixed up with this again. My girlfriend is pretty much using, so I get mixed up with that again. I end up going to jail. It was a very scary situation for me because it was the first time I had ever been to jail. They literally are there to scare you. They put me in a 23-hour lockdown cell. I got out for an hour, chained me everywhere. They finally let me out. I get on probation. I basically get a get out of jail free card with this. That's basically what happened. And then I decided to move to Alabama. Once I get there and I'm trying to get myself better and trying to get her better at the same time, finally somebody kind of presented to me what this treatment center that they were going to that was for using methadone. I had already been introduced to methadone prior with the wafers and stuff like that. They had used it a little bit in my detoxes before, but very mild. But then I go in and I ended up meeting with different doctors, different therapists that were there. And it wasn't ran like it was in Florida, like it's basically just a drug station. This was very different. They had me on different milligrams. They watched everything. It was an actual full-blown treatment center the way they did it. I had never been to, and I still haven't been, except for my last run. I hadn't been to somewhere where they did this like this.
Like legitimately.
You know, like
they
I
want to
hadn't
help
done that.
people.
They want to help people,
money.
yeah. And it's a process. You get on, you get off. It wasn't a steadfast thing that you stayed on either.
Yeah, exactly. And I firmly believe that. And by the way, time, as long as we're wrapped within, 30 minutes, we have 30 minutes. So it's okay. We have plenty of time.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a time limits on these. Some of my episodes are 2 hours long. It really, it doesn't
I feel
matter.
like I could talk to you all day. I mean,
yeah.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah. So don't worry about the time. But yet, like the treatment center thing is, you can tell right away if they genuinely want to help you. And the Suboxone maintenance thing, I'm all about it. But you should be also weaning down by the time you get out of that, like residential, in my opinion. Yeah. You should be weaned down by the time you get into a sober living, and then get on the Vivitrol, because that will help with the cravings, and that is something that you can stop on a dime, and you won't have to withdraw from.
Yeah.
But while you're under care, use the subs, but don't overuse them. Don't take them because it's time to take them. You know what I mean? Take them because you can't go on anymore without it. Yeah. Then you take a piece of a sub. Then you're gonna feel better. And then if that took 36 hours, try to go 48.
Yeah.
Try to push.
No, I totally agree. There's a whole different way that we could be using things to come on and off.
Suboxone is an amazing tool.
It really is.
If used correctly.
Tool. I also think that methadone is a good tool. People might not agree with me, but it saved my life. It got me off of a needle, and it got me really, my mind starting to get back, because even though I had months of sobriety and blips in between, it was always that, going back to that dopesick show, it's like that girl where she just couldn't figure out why she wanted to keep doing. She'd have all these months and then she'd be all fucked up again and have to do it. It's because her brain wasn't being fed correctly to get herself better yet.
Holy, I didn't realize you were bisexual until you said that. So now I realize how much you really resonated with that girl.
Yeah.
With the girlfriend, and then that makes a lot more sense that you keep on going back to her, and it's not wrong, but that was your focus. Was her story.
It was kind of all of it, but it was she started when they started the show, and when she really got into that part where she got blown up in the mines thing, that whole explosion, and she's sitting there going, I don't know what's wrong with me. Something in my head, like where you felt it, I felt it when she said that. Her character is very different than mine. We don't really have a lot of similarities.
Yeah, you didn't grow up religious, or with the parents that were together, and the quiet.
Yeah.
She had a quiet mom that when she told her she was gay, pretending she didn't hear. Like, I feel like your mom is very, very accepting and loving, and as long as you're happy, that's all she gives a fuck about.
Yeah. When I told my mom that I was with a woman, she was like, okay. She's like, are you coming for dinner?
You happy?
I was like,
exactly.
Yeah. She didn't think anything of it, but.
And it doesn't make you a bad mom, by the way. It doesn't make you a bad mom if you are the opposite, where you aren't sure what to say to your kid. If you're a parent and your kid comes out and you don't know what to say, that's okay. It's just it's more of a reflection of how you were raised.
No,
so
it's
not a bad thing. It's just ask questions. If you don't, all anybody wants to know, especially in the community, is ask questions. Be curious. Don't come at it from a hateful way. You can be curious and ask questions. We run LGBTQ meetings at our meeting center. We invite youth to them because of the Trevor Project and how, like, what's going on with youth in the community. And it's all about communication. It's as simple as that. That's all they want in the community, is just communicate with them. Ask them questions if you're curious, And don't be disparaging. Just be okay and accepting. That's all it is. It's a really easy thing. It's not asking fucking much.
I totally agree.
I'm glad your mom's all about it. So now you're in Alabama. You're trying to save your girlfriend who is going off, the rails, and then you discover methadone. And are you maintaining with methadone, like your sobriety?
Yeah, so that was my start of, and the end of me using anything for quite a long time.
That's when you got the treatment, 2011, right?
Yeah, so I ended up staying. I was in Alabama for a couple of years. Then I actually, from when I had gotten in trouble the first time with my get out of jail free card, I owed a little bit of money to the state, and I didn't realize it, and they put a warrant out for me. So my mom calls, and she's like, "You've been back to Florida?" And I'm like, "No." She's like, "Well, you got a warrant out for your arrest." I'm like, "Cool." So I go to the job. Now I'm working a really good job. I have a actual great position there. I'm making great money. I've got a home. She can't stay sober for the life of her. Our relationship is dwindling. My mom's like, "You got to come back here and take care of this." So I decide to go do that. I go and I take care of everything. Actually, while I'm leaving to go back home, she literally says, the lawyer calls me and literally says, "I've taken care of everything. Don't worry to come back." I'm like, "Well, I've already been let go from my job to collect unemployment." They're like, "Collect unemployment, come back when you're ready, because we're a big corporation. I can't keep you while you have a warrant." I'm already going back home. I'm like, "Fuck it, I'm going home now." So while I'm there, my ex is going down a different path of drugs with meth that I've never done. Really, I've tried it before, but I didn't go down that path. She's on that path. And I go to the bank one day to take out some money from the savings account because we didn't have the same bank as I did here, and all the money's gone. And then finally my mom was like, "You should really just stay here." And that's exactly what I did. I actually called my neighbor. My neighbor had called me too and was like, "Hey, I didn't know you're having a yard sale today." And I was like, "I'm in Florida." And
she was showing all your shit.
Sold pretty much everything. I think she knew that I really wasn't coming back anyway. I tried to keep it going. I had such a love for her, even through all of the chaos and everything going on. But I also knew that the last time I spoke to her was going to be the last time I spoke to her, because then
let's be real,
2 years into my relationship with my husband, I got a phone call from her brother that she passed, which I knew was going to happen.
Yeah, and she also could have done that to push you away, knowing she was going to drag you down.
Could have, because at that point I was doing really well. I had gotten off the methadone.
And
I was
she knew if
sober.
She takes all your money and she sells all your shit, you're not going to want to be in her life. And then she won't have to feel guilty about taking you down with her.
Yeah.
There's so many relationships that I burned quickly in addiction because, I told my story back in September, right? I had somebody, actually today's episode is Josh. Josh was on in July, and him and I had such a fun conversation. I had him back on in September to interview me about my story and be like my guest, my host, and I was the guest. And because he has a podcast called An Atheist Reads a Big Book.
I like that.
Yeah, him and I get along really well. I'm not an atheist, but Bill Murray's my higher power, so we have a lot of fun talking.
I like that.
So he's today's episode. But anyway, what was I saying? I got confused for a second. I was talking about Josh, about the he asked me, he goes, when he was talking, he goes, "I know you don't really have any like women in your life during, like, you had one serious relationship and to your childhood best friend, but there wasn't really any other girlfriends. Like I had like problems with relationships along with my drinking." And I was like, "Yeah, it's because I pushed everybody away so quickly because I didn't want anybody to come down with me. I was so accepting of the fact that I was a drug addict, and this was a lot that I have. And I just didn't want to hurt anybody else because I consciously knew what I was doing to myself, and I just didn't want to be responsible to hurt anybody else."
Sure.
And so, I could see if I was in her shoes pushing away somebody I loved, because then I would die even faster knowing I was hurting somebody I loved.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you got to Florida. You kind of, not escape it, but you got to get away before you went down that hole with her.
Yes.
Yeah. Both literally and figuratively, unfortunately. And that's, we lose people in this, and we lose a lot of people in this, unfortunately. Yeah. But the only way I can look at it with an open mind is they died so I could live. They died to teach me a lesson that I didn't want them to teach me.
Yeah.
And without saying that in my head, when someone dies from this fucking disease, I would be doing it with them again. because this is such a hard thing. People think addicts have it tough. Try being in recovery. We have to go to Al-Anon just to stay sane sometimes because people relapse around us all the time. When you work in recovery, if you're not doing Al-Anon or Nar-Anon and you're working in recovery or you're working with a lot of sponsees in some kind of capacity, look into it, please, because it's going to help you greatly.
100%.
That's advice from like, an old timer that they gave me, like, why aren't you an Al-Anon? Why aren't you a Nar-Anon?
Yeah.
Because you are surrounding yourself with addicts that are going to hurt you. You need to protect yourself because it's your sobriety at the end of the day that comes first.
Yeah.
The selfish thing that we do with getting sober. Getting sober isn't a very selfish thing. We have to cut out everybody to fucking do this right,
Absolutely.
So now you're in Florida. You're cutting out. Is this when you get your first like treatment job where like?
Yes. So I come home. Now I am in my late 20s. I think 29, 28 at this time. I got to be 29 because then my husband and I reconnected six or 7 months later, and then I turned 30. So anyhow, I ended up coming back and I stayed, did everything I needed to do. And now I'm there with nothing and no money. And I'm like, everything is done. I left everything I had there. And my mom has been working my mom's a personal trainer. She does yoga, Pilates, does all that with the senior citizens too. She does like silver sneakers, but she was doing yoga at a treatment center in town. And I went with her. She's like, why don't you come to yoga class with me? I'm like, yeah, okay. So I go, and there's this kid there who's trying to leave, and I basically talk him out of it. And he goes and he stays. I spent probably 3 or 4 hours with him that night. My mom and I took him to go eat. We took him back, whatever, this and that. Got him back to come back. And then
I have such chills right now in my entire body because how is that the first time you got high in sobriety? Like that was the first time I got high in sobriety was when I talked somebody into staying.
It was the most gratifying feeling that I had ever felt in my entire life.
I was almost
in
tears.
To keep helping people.
Yeah, I was almost in tears when they were trying to leave because just FYI for people, when you go to rehab, they don't lock the doors. There's no fences that keep us in. We can walk the fuck out whenever we want.
Anytime.
You just can't walk back in. You can leave. They're inviting you to leave. They're going to leave your shit at the end of the driveway. Just don't come the fuck back in. So, like, you can leave. This is not prison. You can walk out when you want. The thing is, when you walk out, you are just stuck and really alone. So it's about that little reminder of you're here. Just stay. You're safe. Stay where it's safe. It will happen. Today's a bad day. Life's not going to be perfect. You're going to have bad days in sobriety, and you're going to have to learn how to sit through those bad days to get to the good days again. I've had some really rough days lately where I live in depression sometimes. And, when I get depressed, I shut down. And it's funny to say that I don't talk because I can't shut the fuck up. But when I'm depressed, it's scary because I'll go 12 hours without speaking a word, uttering a word out loud. And, even my wife, she knows when I can't stop talking, or she knows when I'm depressed because I don't talk. That's, it's completely like, I'm just like going through the motions.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I'm that transparent, because it would be dangerous for my mental health if I wasn't that transparent, if I could hide my depression.
Sure.
So it is one of the most gratifying things to be able to. I talked to a girl out of leaving, and she's still sober to this day, 4 years later, and I'm still friends with her on Facebook. And every time I see her post shit, I'm just so fucking happy about it. So is that how you decide, like, I need to be in this kind of job?
Actually, no. The owner of the treatment center called me the next day and asked me if I wanted a job.
Oh, shit.
She's looked at me. She called me. She was a friend of my mom's, and she asked me to come down. I spent probably an hour or two with her, and she was like, do you want to do this? Oh, she's like,
as a tech, right? Like,
yeah, as a tech. She's like, I will.
For addicts.
Yeah, she's like, I will send you to the different programs that you need to do from Florida, so you can learn them. Excuse me, and we'll get you started. I didn't really understand what the job entailed at first, so I said, yeah. And I didn't think twice about it, and I didn't look back. She schooled me. She taught me everything. She was also a therapist and a doctor as well. So she took the time to really teach me everything. She spent a lot of time with me.
She probably it's not that common to see somebody care that much to take a stranger and then guide them back into, do what that stranger can do for themselves. There was nothing in it for you to talk to that stranger into leaving or staying. There was nothing in it for you. You weren't winning anything. You weren't taking any money. You weren't making any money. You weren't losing any money. You had nothing in there. And
right.
and when, as somebody when you see that and you're like, that person just genuinely cares about people. And that's the kind of person I want to like mold into somebody that can be a great person that can help a lot of people now.
Yeah.
And if she can do that without any help, imagine what my help can do to make her, Yeah. So, how long did you work in treatment before you had that lapse? And we're going to get to that lapse right now.
So I want to say that was 11. Let's see. 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 7 years.
So you had a solid 7 years before you had a lapse.
Of nothing. Nothing at all.
Okay. Now, it's 2018. You're happily married to your best friend.
I'm not married yet. Not married yet, but I'm engaged.
You're together. You're engaged.
We're engaged. We live together. We're doing good.
You're still working in treatment.
Still working in treatment.
Were you working a program in those 7 years? Were you a meeting person, or was your program your job?
So in the beginning, when I first started, I was 100% back in the rooms again. I was doing everything I needed to do.
Once when you're a tech,
to start being once I moved up to a lead and then to a supervisor and then went to school. I did some schooling. I did everything I needed to do. And then I went and became I was a supervisor, and then I became a director. My game changed. I couldn't really go into the rooms anymore and talk about things because I'm a director of a treatment center and people are coming in and out of the treatment centers all the time. I would go in, I would speak, I would do all that kind of stuff. But then I kind of found cannabis along the way then too, before I had my lapse. And I remember talking to one of the doctors, and I was telling him about it, and he was so pro cannabis and CBD, and I was getting really bad migraines, and instead of taking painkillers or all the other stuff that made me so loopy or tired, I started using CBD, and then I started using a THC tincture that really helped me.
Yep.
I was taking it at night. I felt elevated, but I didn't feel anything like any type of drug use before. Yeah. But I was using it. And I felt at that time I shouldn't be in the rooms because that's what you're taught. You're taught that that's not what you're supposed to do. So I respected it because I don't have, at this point in my life, I've realized that any recovery path to stay sober is what you need to do. I'm not going to bash AA or NA or CA. I'm not going to do that. It was my stepping stone to where I am now. And I'm still on my journey. I'm not even all there yet. You know what I mean? I've just also came out of my shell, I feel like, recently a lot too. Yeah. So I had the lapse. I actually was on a boat and I slipped and I hurt my hand. And I went to the emergency room and they prescribed me painkillers. And at that time, because of my life, I'm like, well, maybe I'm supposed to take this. I'm supposed to do it this way. No, I took that whole bottle. And
How
then,
quick? How quick?
Between that night and the next day, it was gone. And I also knew for some
Were
reason,
you snorting that bottle at all?
So listen, in my addict head, I told the doctor that I already had issues with my stomach and I didn't want a whole bunch of filler if I needed something. So he wrote me the stuff that I needed. You
knew exactly how to fucking. Yep.
I know. No. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it was a very, as quick as it happened, as quick as it stopped. The worst part of it was, is that at this time, my husband was still kind of, he drinks, but he can always stop himself. Like I tell him all the time.
He doesn't have the sensation of craving.
I really wish that I could be like him sometimes. I tell him, he just knows. So the worst part, my worst guilt and my worst regret for this entire thing that happened was, of course, I'm in treatment. So everybody around you either know that can use or not use, or that has stuff or doesn't have stuff. Because I'm in the same area that I did all my stuff, it was very, very easy for me to get stuff. I knew exactly what to do. Even after all that time, I knew what to do, and which was terrible. But I ended up getting some, and I kind of took him along for the ride with me without him really knowing. I just was kind of like, I just want to, just enjoy it. But he knew that I had a problem, but he didn't understand the extent of it until he didn't understand. And I hate that I did that to him because he didn't know any better. I know that people can say that he did or whatever. No, when you're a wife and you are in a committed relationship, you have vehicles, you have homes, you have things, you have savings accounts, you have all this stuff. You have things in your life, you are adults, and you're saying that you just want to party and have a little bit of a release. They don't think anything of it because his mindset isn't like mine. He didn't realize it. And after 2 months of, like, I would be the one that would always initiate, like, I'd like to get something this weekend, but I was doing everything all week and he didn't know,
Yeah.
And, or if I did do something, he would get like 1 and I'd get 10. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's how that worked. So and then there would be times where he'd be like, no, we did that last week. And like, I don't want to do that again. It was always me. It was full forced me. And he got involved with it. I was the one that pushed it. And when he realized that he was starting to have a problem like he did when he was 20, like taking them like that, he works a hard job and he was realizing that he was now putting it in his mind for pain. I realized that I was having a problem and I came clean about it. I'm like, I'm having a problem. He's like, well, you know what? I'm feeling that way too now. He's like, because for doing this so much. And for him, he's like, I just got to stop. Like, we're done. I was like, but I can't stop like that because I'm not honest about how much I'm using. And he's like, okay, well, what do we do? Like, what do we got to do? So that was really hard. We never told my family because it was, I had already put my family through so much. And as quickly as it started is as quickly as it ended. I realized what was going on. I felt terrible for dragging him into something that he looked at differently and looked at as us just having a little bit of a release and a good time. Yeah. We know our boundaries now. We know who we are now. We know what we can and can't do. We've come out stronger than this than we ever did before. And we didn't lose anything. And I went to my employers and I told them what was going on. And I said that I was going to go back on methadone. I knew that it worked. It worked for me before. I said, I'm ready to do this again. So that's when I went to that doctor who fucking told me we were going to do it his way. And he was willing to give his all to make sure, because he was a doctor that literally likes patients that have been in and out. They're like his project. And I'm glad that I became his project. I also, I stayed on it for a certain amount of time, got off of it. Then all the non-narcotic medications were about to come into play. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. We explored cannabis. Cannabis worked. Not only did I get off methadone with just CBD, RSO.
I love
That's
RSO.
How I did it.
That's all.
That's how I did it.
I honestly don't smoke, Dana.
I know you told me that.
Yeah.
You just take all the oral stuff.
I use RSO. And or any of the capsules, really.
This is how we started talking, JD.
That's right.
This is how we started talking, because I said that I got off of methadone with RSO and CBD.
And I had to hop into conversation right there because nobody knows what RSO is.
Yeah.
Nobody knows about Rick Simpson. And, dude's a genius.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that RSO, and, I take my blood pressure, and it's saving. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't, especially because since we've talked actually the first time about that, I had found out from my doctor I lost a lot of stomach tissue where my gallbladder was. So that's why it was so painful whenever I would cough from smoking, was because I have a nerve that was hitting the back of my stomach when I would cough, because I didn't have any tissue to protect it from throwing up bile so much over the years in addiction. So all that bile that I threw up, it ate away at the fucking tissue, which is why I lost the gallbladder and all the tissue. So cannabis, RSO, CBD, especially for migraines, you know how people have red eyes? Those red eyes are because your eyes are being relaxed in the back. And that's what softens the headaches. It's the strain from the eyes. Mm-hmm. That's a good sign when your eyes are red, and that means it's relaxing in the back of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of amazing things. There's over 300 fucking ailments that can be cured because of cannabis.
Yes.
At one time with one hit, like no other medicine in pharmaceuticals. Trust me, we've looked.
100%. Done it all. Been our own pharmacist.
And now, I was my therapist and my pharmacist. I thought I was so good at it. And now you do your when did you start your Instagram? That plant curing. It's going to be tagged in the description. So if you're listening or watching and you don't already know Dana or follow Dana, just go to the description of the episode. You can click right in and follow her journey from there too. And I'm sure you're going to be back for an episode because we're not done. We skipped
for
a lot
sure.
in 2 hours.
I feel like we skipped like so much, and it's so hard when you're first having like a real conversation with someone that you've actually been following for a while, and then you're like trying to get it all in, and it's really hard because we're trying to fit in 15 years pretty much for me right now, and I don't really know how to do that. I've skipped stuff, I've glanced over stuff, I've probably mixed up timelines, but I'm doing the best I can.
Like I said, my buddy Josh has been on 3 times. This girl Ashley's been on 3 times. Tara's been on twice. You know, maybe I'll have you and Tara on as a special episode sometime.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
You know what I mean? So yeah, don't feel bad. This is the whole point. Is now the audience will get to know you over time. You know, it's not just going to be downloaded in once. You know, and
I'm probably going to change my name on Instagram again because I had done it before. I'm trying to find a really good name for myself, and I really haven't been able to. So if anybody has any good comments about that, let me know. I just haven't been able to. I first was Dana Loves Plants, Dana Loves Dabs, then I was Plant Cure, then I was Plant Curing, and then one of my girlfriends has a brand called Salt Cured, which is completely awesome, and then I thought it sounded too much like it, but the relevance of what she has that she uses for her anxiety and depression, she uses basically going to the beach to deal with it and to draw and to work through what she goes through. Basically was like, well, I'm doing the same thing with plants, but then it sounded too much like her, and I didn't want to. It doesn't matter. Anything that I have picked, somebody has, or it sounds like it. But I didn't want to do cured because I'll never be cured. But curing was like, all right, I'm using
a work in progress.
Daily to cure. It's a work in progress. Yeah. Anyhow, so I got through my last lapse. Okay, let's go back to that. I got through my last lapse. I stayed on the program. I was in therapy for a really long time. Did everything I needed to do. This was the best relapse and recovery I did because I did it all for myself. It was just for me. My husband was there every step of the way to support me. It's still, I worked through the guilt now of what I felt, the guilt and shame that I did with him because I never wanted to go down that road with him. And it was 100% me. When I say it was me, it was me. I know it. I take full ownership. Yes, he could have said no. Yes, he couldn't. But it's really hard to do that. And when you're lying to somebody, not giving them the full disclosure, they don't really know what's going on.
Especially in a trusting relationship with someone who's been sober for 7 years.
Yeah.
That works in treatment. You know, why would he have a reason not to trust you, Dana?
Exactly.
You know, and if you go back to one of my episodes, I almost did the same thing to my wife.
Yeah.
And I had already relapsed with drinking at this point, and I had said, hey, let's go see my sister for the night. You know, we were kid-free for the weekend. I was like, let's go down and see my sister in Jersey. We'll hit this on the way. I'll get you some cheesesteaks. And meanwhile, I'm already planning to meet my old dealer in Jersey and pick up some pills. And, you know, on the way. Mm-hmm. And then we walk out the door to leave. It's a 2-hour ride to Jersey from where we're at, by the way. Mm-hmm. And we walk out the door to leave. And I said, never mind. I don't want to go. Something's going to happen with the car. I don't want to go. She's like, what? I'm like, I don't trust myself there. I think I'm going to get high if I go. And I think something's going to happen with the car. I just had this really bad sinking feeling, and we're staying home tonight. Yeah. And, you know, it was.
That's the main reason why I live 3 hours away from where I'm from in Florida. Yeah. I knew that once I got better and so
I'm too close, but not too far.
I'm not exactly.
You know,
I'm in a whole different place right now.
Too close. When I was
hours way too close.
I was doing that trip 4 times a week, no problem. I can be back in 2 hours and high. Fuck it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. I'm gonna let you go though. We're gonna definitely have a part 2. There's definitely gonna be a part 2 in the new year with you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this. Is awesome. I love talking. You know, I'll see you tomorrow though. If you want to keep following Dana before she comes back for another part 2, you know, her Instagram will be tagged.
We haven't even got into like when I stopped, how I got into cannabis. Like we got to do a part 2 now.
We are going to do a part 2.
Okay.
We are 100%. The only reason I got to cut it short is because I have 7 women waiting for me from Ohio in 6 minutes. And
then you do that.
And I need a cigarette.
Heard that.
I got to facilitate an interview with 7 women at one time. I need a cigarette first.
I get that.
But thank you so much, Dana.
Absolutely.